Hi, Mrs. Scott's children. Welcome to take 3 of this happy cooking time that we have at the Scott household. Okay, so tonight we are going to be making banana chocolate chip cookies, and I can't do anything funny because I can't. Okay, my phone's almost dead, that's why. So just an FYI to begin with, I'm going to go ahead and read off the list of ingredients that you're supposed to have for this recipe. So 2.5 cups of flour. 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 cup of sugar, 2/3 a cup of butter softened, 2 eggs, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1 cup of mashed bananas, 2 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips. Now, for the purpose of this recipe, we've gone ahead and cut everything in half. So that means that any of those ingredient portions that I've just listed, just go ahead and divide those by 2. This is a fantastic opportunity for you to work on your fractions, okay? So, to begin with, we have all of our dry ingredients added into this bowl over here. Let me go ahead and turn this little underlight on for you so you can see them. And we've also started to add our wet ingredients along with our butter into this second bowl here. Because the first step in the recipe actually says to go ahead and cream the butter with the sugar until light and fluffy. And I'm going to go ahead and continue doing that in just a moment, and then we're going to beat the eggs in. And we've already mixed in the vanilla extract, so those have already been added in there together. Okay. After a few minutes of doing that, we'll go ahead and we'll add in our flour mixture, and we'll stir that until, and we'll combine everything. And then after a few more minutes of stirring that, we'll go ahead and combine all of the chocolate chips into this as well. Okay? Now, if you go ahead and sneak over here to the oven, we've already preheated the oven to 400 degrees. Okay, so that is all set for us. And then Mrs. Scott has been kind enough to go ahead and get the baking pan greased for us. So we should be just about ready to go. So I will go ahead and continue to cream the butter and the sugar mixture. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm going to tell you that Mrs. Scott changed one other thing in the recipe. Instead of adding all white sugar into this, she split the sugar. Half of it is now white sugar and half of it is brown sugar. Mrs. Scott, do you want to tell us why you decided to add the brown sugar in?
Yep, I think the brown sugar just kind of gives it a creamier, richer consistency. I like the texture difference. So I think, I'll give you a textural difference in the cookie. If you look at Mr. Scott, he has combined the butter and sugar together. It's all creamed together. It's double in volume. He's using the back of the wooden spoon to kind of mush that all up. So wait until that is all one entity before you start gradually adding the flour in.
Okay, but we also have to add the eggs in first before we add the flour.
So we used 1 egg and we're going to mix that in together.
And remember, this is only 1 egg, not 2 like the original recipe calls for, because we halved everything. Okay? So now we'll go ahead and continue adding this. Stirring it really well as we go along. Now, one of the reasons that we want to make sure that we have all of this mixed really well before we add the dry ingredients into this is because if you ever cook cookies in the oven and you take them out and you eat them, they might taste really good, but you might have this really crunchy texture, this granulated crunchy texture to your cookies. And sometimes that's because the sugar has not been distributed evenly amongst the cookies. So they might have a nice sweet flavor, but they don't have that great texture all around. And so you really want to make sure that you cream the ingredients like this really well prior to adding in the dry ingredients so that it's nice and even. Oh yeah, look at that. Look how that softened nicely when we added the egg in there. And there's no clumps left. This is perfect. Okay. So now we'll go ahead and we'll add our dry ingredients into this.
I would suggest you add it in gradually and keep stirring. So we're going to do that now. And I'll just make it easier when you're stirring. So we're doing that now. So you want to make sure that it's all combined, it's all one color. So I'm going to keep stirring until that flour is really mixed in well with the wet ingredients. And we know when it's done, when we don't see any white flour in the bowl. So I'm going to keep mixing.
And you want to keep trying to kind of whisk off the sides of the bowl as well, so that you don't have any big clumps of flour, baking powder, baking soda, or salt that are left on the sides of the bowl. So it's all combined together. Oh yeah.
Yeah, looking good.
You've done well. Now the last portion of this, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add our banana in here. I'm gonna go ahead and mash that up here in just a second. And we're also gonna add our chocolate chip cookies. Oh yeah, look at that. You can see how all of that's taken on a very similar consistency. We have very, very little of the flour, baking soda, baking powder, and salt mixture left on the sides of this. And I'm gonna go ahead and smash this guy actually. Inside it's peeling just a little bit.
Make it easier.
Yep.
We're going to add the banana. So if you have ripe bananas, this is what you can do with them rather than wasting them or throwing them away.
Well, you actually want them to be overly ripe. Yeah, is how we want it to be. And that means that it's just mashed. And it's well enough, or soft enough to mash very easily. And then if you want to add in the chocolate chips, Mrs. Scott, that would be groovy.
And I use a cup and I'm adding them in gradually. We've added them all in. If you want to get your hands in there, you can kind of make sure that's all mixed together. And then in a minute or two, that dough will be ready to go in the oven. And when you're scooping, I probably use like a spoon to scoop them. If you have an ice cream scoop, that would also work. And that way you're going to have them nice and even. They're all going to be uniform and they're all going to be the same size. And ideally, that's what you want.
Now, just an FYI, it's going to get harder to mix some of this with a spoon as you go along, so you can see it's a little bit tougher as I'm doing this. And that's just what happens as the dough thickens up a little bit as well.
And if your mixture is slightly wet or runny, you can add maybe 1/4 cup of oatmeal, or like similar to Monster cookies, or you can add a little bit of flour. Just because we've added the mixture, the banana in, it's slightly wet, so I might add. If I had oats at home, I could put that in, or an extra little bit of flour. I think I'm just going to add a little bit of flour. I think the flour's over there behind you. So it just makes it easier. I would do a little bit.
I'm just going to do a little bit.
Okay. Just be careful that doesn't burn. Okay. Okay, and then we don't want to add too much. That's going to dry out the recipe. And we are going to use oats. I think that'd help, and it may give them a little bit of crunch. So this is when you would add your 1/4 cup of oats that we're going to measure.
Go.
Yep, and then I think we have an ice cream scoop, so we're going to scoop them on our cookie sheet, and then we're going to set a timer for we'll do 12 minutes, and then we'll check them. Cookies continue to bake after cooking, so most people tend to overdo their cookies because they don't think they're done. So after 12 minutes, I think they'll be done. So we're using ice cream scoop because they're going to flatten out a little bit. We're making sure that, we have a couple of inches in between each cookie. We don't want to put them close together just because they are going to double in size.
And here's a great opportunity for you to do a math problem. If you start thinking about this as we're putting these cookies on the cookie tray, well, I'm leaving an inch or so in between each cookie. Do an estimation in your head about how many cookies you could actually get on this tray if you're thinking about arrays in mathematics.
So Mr. Scott is going to put all these cookies on the tray, making sure that he leaves enough distance between them. Then they are going to go in the oven for 12 minutes. After 12 minutes, we'll check them. And then as you can see over here, I have my cooling rack out to save cleanup. If you have parchment paper, put that underneath your cooling rack. Then you can take the cookies out, put them on here straight away. And if there are crumbs that fall, you can just simply pick up the parchment paper and throw it in the trash or rubbish. So these are on, and my kids are gonna enjoy these. Bon appetit. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay.